Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated as we are about to begin our program. Ladies and gentlemen, I would again request you to please be seated as we are just about to begin our session. You're requested to switch off your mobile phones or put them to the silent mode. Thank you. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Respected guests, good evening and assalamu alaikum. I'm Tayyaba Akil and I extend a very warm welcome to all present here at the closing ceremony of the 3rd Islamabad Literature Festival. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to request Amina Sayyed, Asif Farooqi, Mohtarma Zehra Nigah, Paul Harding to please come on to the stage. Thank you. Honorable guests, I take pleasure in inviting Amina Sayyed, OBE, who's the Managing Director, Oxford University Press, and Founder, Director, Karachi and Islamabad Literature Festivals, for the closing speech.
Thank you, Tayyaba. Zehra Nigah Sahiba, Paul Harding, Dr. Asif Farooqi, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum and good evening. Actually, before I start, may I request you to observe a 1-minute silence for the victims of the Nepal earthquake who are spread across Nepal, Bangladesh, India, and Tibet. I hope you have enjoyed the 2.5 days of literature, art, poetry, cinema, history, politics, education, ideas, books, and all the dialogues and debates that have taken place. The whole idea of the Islamabad Literature Festival is to pay homage and tribute to our authors and recognize their talents and contributions to the development of our society. For that is what writers do. They connect people, they create networks, and they create communities. They tell stories, they share ideas, offer different perspectives and different ways of looking at life. There were many poets and authors of fiction at the Islamabad Literature Festival, including the Pulitzer Prize winner, Paul Harding. Fiction gives us a sense of being relevant and living in our own society. In a session just before this, on partition, there was such an emphasis on fiction, on how we have learned more about partition, about the nuances through fiction. Fiction involves a space in our minds, and it asks us to think of an alternative world. It gives dignity to victims. Journalism is pure objectivity, but fiction gives subjectivity and tells a story beyond what is there. We as a nation have been suffering trauma, and you saw the large audiences for the session on trauma and mental health in Pakistan by Doctors Aisha Mia and Murad Musa. We also had a very moving session by the students of the Army Public School who suffered the trauma of the 16th of December. Telling and sharing stories of trauma help reduce our suffering and increase our resistance. We have celebrated books, authors, and readers over the last 3 days. We have heard so many voices because there's a voice in every book, in every poem, that tells us something that makes us see things with new eyes. The same voice speaks differently to different readers because it mingles with the thoughts and experiences of readers. We have had authors and publishers and a major book distributor from India. Rahul Singh and Mala Dayal, the son and daughter of the beloved Khushwant Singh, were with us at the Islamabad Literature Festival. Khushwant Singh was born in Pakistan, in Hadiali, near Sargodha, and his ashes were interred there in his old school by Faqir Ejazuddin. Khushwant's son Rahul and daughter Mala visited Hadiali on their way to Islamabad from Lahore, and they were moved by the love showered on them by the people of Hadiali. Khushwant Singh had said that his roots were in Hadiali and he had nourished them with tears of nostalgia. Also from India, we had the Hijra, Lakshmiji Narayan Tripathi, who joined us to launch a book published by Oxford University Press. And I'm sure your book has done very well, Lakshmiji. And you were joined, we were also joined by Almas Bobby. Mr. Om Arora, the biggest book distributor of India, who was at the Islamabad Literature Festival. He has the biggest book distributorship based in Connaught Place in New Delhi. Mr. Om Arora said that his father began his career in bookselling from his first shop in Kohat. Urvashi Butalia, the well-known feminist academic publisher from Delhi, visited her grandparents' home in Model Town, Lahore, on her way to Islamabad for the festival. So there's so much of a common heritage that we share, and I hope that ILF can pay tribute to this heritage and help build bridges and bring hearts together. Yes, of course, Pran Neville. Absolutely. Thank you, Sallu, for reminding me. Pran Neville is here. And Pran has a very special relationship to Lahore. And I wish that I had the authority, but I would like to offer Pran Neville the key to Lahore and actually a citizenship of Lahore. I would ask the Punjab government to do that. Thank you, Pran, for your love for Lahore and indeed for Pakistan and for your frequent visits. Similarly, the authors we have had from France, the US, the UK, and Australia showed us through their discourse and their writer's craft that we have so much in common with them. Every writer communicates something to us. It's something that we find relevant, comprehensible, something that resonates with us and draws us closer to their cultures. That is what literature festivals mean to us, to bring people closer and create networks and communities, thereby contributing to understanding, peace, tolerance, and a sense of inclusiveness and belonging. I feel that through the Islamabad Literature Festival, we have come closer to achieving this. I would like to thank our partners who have made this festival possible. The USAID funded Pakistan Reading Project, the American Embassy in Islamabad, the Embassy of France, the Embassy of the Republic of France in Islamabad, the Embassy of Italy in Islamabad, the British Council, the American Institute of Pakistan Studies, Beacon House School System, Awaz, Getz Pharma, HBL, UBL, Art Now, and Mr. Dara Bashir of Manhattan Advertising. I would also like to thank the Islamabad Literature Festival team members from Karachi, Rahila Bakai, Zehra Naseem Haq, I'll just finish reading the names. This is the ILF team from Karachi. Muniza Ali, Faria Sami, Anika Khokar, Sumair Qureshi, and Qasimuddin Chawla. They have worked tirelessly for months. I would also like to thank our team members, the Islamabad Literature Festival team members from Islamabad, Peshawar, and Aptabad, who have also worked tirelessly for the ILF. Fayyaz Raja, Suhail Bhatti, Wasif Javed, Faizan Khan, Tayyab Hussain, Ijaz Gulzar, Hasib Ahmad, Amir Siddiqui, Malik Bilal Haider, Sarfaraz Khan, Javed Azam, Tayyiba Aqil, Aska Khan, Sadia Naeem, Hina Khan, and Anam Moinuddin. Thank you very much for the wonderful work that all of you have done to make this possible. And of course, I cannot forget our young volunteers who have been here and who have, I think, helped us in every way we can. Thank you, our volunteers. Thank you very much, all of you, for coming here and for attending our sessions and being a part of the Islamabad Literature Festival. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you, Amina, for the stimulating speech and sharing the highlights of the festival. Respected guests, now I would like to request Mr. Asif Farooqi, founder, Karachi and Islamabad Literature Festivals, for the closing speech.
Honorable delegates, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, Khawateen o Hazrat, Assalamu alaikum. These have been 2.5 days filled with books and book talk, filled to the brim in fact. But as we approach the closure of this year's edition of the festival, it is not so much with a sense of fatigue or feeling tired, but with a complete sense of fulfillment and satisfaction. We are aware of several shortcomings that have remained despite trying to deal with those, but we are still grateful for your enthusiasm and your wholehearted support. Many months before the festival, a small group of dedicated and tireless workers begins its work of thinking, selecting, planning, inviting, and learning not to be disappointed when people start refusing, and making things happen and making do with the best of what is available. Their work comes to an end the day the festival starts and begins with a new energy immediately after it is over. So as we bring this session to a closure, we will start thinking about KLF and ILF, and soon we'll start planning, because that's going to be a year-long process. And we will continue to dream and plan, and as we do each time, and of course we will wait for your feedback and suggestions. While we are delighted with your response, but we are humbled when we think of the enormity of the task and what still requires to be done, what still needs to be done. There are so many hands which do not know how to hold a pen, and eyes which cannot make sense of the words which are printed or written on the page. As a nation, we have learned to put guns in the hands of teachers and students. Perhaps that it too is required. I'm not going to get into a debate of that, but guns cannot replace books, and a pen is still the mightiest weapon. There are painful reminders of the transition in society which we are witnessing, but we cannot be silent witnesses. Literature is our act of witnessing and of our intellectual participation. And we had a painful reminder of this when we heard about the death of Sabeen Mahmood. Later on, we are going to present a kind of resolution putting some words to our feelings. But now I would like to thank you as we bring this program, this session to a close, and we look forward already to thinking about KLF and ILF in 2016. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Farooqi, for sharing your thoughts with us. Respected guests, I would like to invite our keynote speaker, Zehra Nigah Sahiba, for the keynote speech. Aaiye, Zehra.
ख़वातीन हज़रात, बेहद शुक्रिया आप लोगों का कि आपने मुझे इस मनसब के लिए मुंतखब किया. इसमें थोड़ी सी ज़रा सी कुछ भूल चूक हो गई है. मुझे पूरा इल्म नहीं था कि मुझे कीनोट स्पीच करनी है, वरना मैं कुछ तैयारी करके लाती. तो एक खैरखा ने मुझे मशवरा दिया कि भाई कुछ भी बोल दीजिए, और हम लोग चाय पी रहे थे तो वहाँ पर भी एक मशवरा ये दिया गया कि भाई आए बारिश आए कुछ भी कह दीजिए. तो यही आजकल बहुत मकबूल हो रहा है. ये जलसा तो ऐसा नहीं है कि इसमें हम इस तरह की बात कर सकें, क्योंकि यहाँ तो बात संजीदगी से होती है और संजीदगी से सुनी जाती है. तो किस्सा ये है कि इस फेस्टिवल के बारे में जब आप अपने घर जाएंगे और सोचेंगे कि ये 2 दिन आपने किस तरह गुजारे, तो आपको यकीन नहीं आएगा कि ये दारुल हुकूमत में आपने 2 दिन गुजारे हैं या पाकिस्तान में गुजारे हैं. क्योंकि हमारे यहाँ अक्सर जो मजमे होते हैं और जो तकारीब मुनक़िद की जाती हैं, उसमें पहला जोर तो खाने पीने पे होता है और उसके बाद
लिबास पे होता है, फिर जूतों की और बैग की कीमतों का अंदाज़ा लगाया जाता है, फिर कभी कभी तो कोई अल्लाह का बहादुर बंदा पे पैकेट वगैरह की भी बात करने लगता है. लेकिन यहाँ ऐसा कुछ नहीं है. देखिए कितने बहुत सारे लोग आए, किसी ने किसी के बारे में कोई ज़ाती सवाल नहीं किया, किसी ने कोई शेखी नहीं बताई, कोई बड़ी बात नहीं की. सिर्फ़ एक मकसद था कि हम नई नई किताबें देखें, किताबें पढ़ें, उन्हें घर ले जाएं. अब किताबों की इस अहमियत को वाज़े करना, आप सोचिए कि हमारी इस सोसाइटी में कितना अहम है और हम इससे कितने दूर होते जा रहे थे. ये तो मैं इनकी अमीना की हिम्मत की दाद देती हूँ और उन चंद पब्लिशर्स की भी हिम्मत की दाद देती हूँ कि वो बड़ी हिम्मत से और हौसले के साथ किताबें शाये कर रहे हैं. ऐसा अच्छा लगता है मुझे जब मैं सुबह सुबह वहाँ पर बाहर निकली हूँ और शाम में गई हूँ, तो मैंने देखा कि बहुत सारे लड़के लड़कियाँ किताबों की दुकानों पे झुके हुए अपनी अपनी पसंद की किताबें देख रहे हैं. तो यही वो निशानियाँ हैं जिससे हमें लगता है कि हमें एहसास है हम खाक हैं, ये हुस्न व ज़ेबाइश, हमें इक़रार है हम खौफ हैं, ये अमन व आसाइश. हम तो माजी हैं मगर ये सूरत फ़रदा फ़रोज़ा हैं, हम मुश्किल हैं मगर ये सूरत उम्मीद आसान हैं. तो इनसे हमारी उम्मीदें हैं. और जब मैं अपनी इन नौजवान उम्मीदों को किताबें ख़रीदते और हाथों में किताबें लेते देखती हूँ, तो मुझे लगता है कि नहीं, अभी दम है हम में और इंशाअल्लाह ये दम कायम रहेगा. बहुत खुशी की बात है. मेन मकसद भी अमीना का यही है कि किताबों की फरावानी हो, किताबें आसानी से आपके हाथों में जाएं. हमारी बदनसीबी ये रही है कि हमने इल्म को पेशे के साथ नत्थी कर दिया है. इस वजह से किताबों की पसंदीदगी और फरावानी बच्चों के दिलचस्पी के लिए नहीं रही है. तो इस सिलसिले में बड़े दिलचस्प वाक़यात भी हैं, लेकिन फिर इंशाअल्लाह कभी सही आपको बहुत से किस्से सुना दूँगी. लेकिन मुझे बहुत अच्छा लगा और मैं कि हर जगह मुझसे अल्लाह मियाँ बहुत ख़फ़ा होंगे क्योंकि मैंने अपने सिलसिले में बहुत झूठ बोलना शुरू कर दिया है कि मैं नहीं हूँ, मैं जा रही हूँ, मेरे पास वक्त नहीं है. ये नहीं कि मैं कोई बहुत मकबूल तरीन आदमी हूँ, लोग मोहब्बत से इज़्ज़त से बुलाते हैं. लेकिन अमीना अगर कह दें कि हमारे फेस्टिवल में आना है, आसिफ कह दे तो फिर मेरा दिल इनकार करने को नहीं चाहता। आ जाती हूँ और आप लोगों से बातें करके, मुझे आप लोगों को देख के, आपको किताबें ख़रीदते देख के, मैं जब देखती हूँ बैग्स में किताबें उठाए बच्चे चले जा रहे हैं, लड़कियाँ भी हैं, लड़के भी हैं, उम्र रसीदा भी हैं, अधेड़ भी हैं, जवान भी हैं, तो मुझे बड़ी तमानियत का एहसास होता है। और इंशाअल्लाह ये सिलसिला कायम रहेगा। मैं उम्मीद करती हूँ कि आप सब इसी तरह इन फेस्टिवल्स में शरीक होंगे, जहाँ हम एक दूसरे से तहज़ीब का, इंसानियत का, इल्म का, एहसास का सबक सीखते रहेंगे। शुक्रिया, बहुत बहुत नवाजिश।
Actually, I would like to once again thank Mohtarma Zehra Nigah Sahiba for joining us here today, traveling from Karachi and staying here. बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया आपका ज़हरा आपा. And also I would like to say that amongst us is a legend, and I'm sure you know who I mean, Intizar Hussain Sahab. इंतज़ार साहब, आपका बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया कि तशरीफ़ लाए. I would like to quote Nadeem Aslam, who said that Intizar Hussain Sahab is today the greatest living writer on the planet Earth. This is from Nadeem Aslam. Thank you.
थैंक यू अमीना. ज़हरा आप आपके खूबसूरत ख्यालात के इजहार का बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया. Now, I would like to call upon our keynote speaker, Mr. Paul Harding, winner of Pulitzer Prize, to share his keynote speech with us. Please.
Thank you. I just found out before I got on the plane to join you this weekend that I was going to be delivering a keynote speech. Since I've been I was coming to you as a guest, I had felt as if it was my great privilege to listen, to watch, to witness, to learn from my time here. So my original keynote that I would have struck would have been one of respectful silence, but that would make for a bad speech. So these are just some of my impressions of just sort of collected this afternoon in my hotel room after the wonderful experience of joining you this weekend. I'm an artist, and one of the themes that has run throughout the weekend has been the idea of imaginative truth. As an artist, I seek imaginative truth. I spend my time listening to characters who present themselves in fragmentary, incomplete, sort of halting initial images or the sound of their voice, and I spend my time interrogating them and trying to find out what their humanity is and to bring it onto the page. And I think that process, habituating myself to listening to and invoking the humanity of fictional characters, is related to, inspired by, and in turn inspires how we, as artists, not just myself, but as artists in any medium, need to grant one another our humanity. I think that how I construct fictional characters is analogous to how we construct ourselves as individuals. One of my teachers always told me that art embodies its own meaning, and I think, again, the process is similar to how we embody ourselves. Both of these processes are fragile, they're improvisational, they move from faith to despair, back to faith again. Again, they're interrogative, we're always questioning ourselves and who we are in the world. Both of these processes require long amounts of time and large amounts of space. They also require education and mutual cooperation with one another. That means they require mutual respect and that we honor one another as human beings and as artists as well. Art mirrors and reenacts and reminds us how we must treat one another. It reminds us of this time that we need to give one another, of the space, of the education, of the cooperation. A theologian I admire very much, a Swiss writer named Karl Barth, wrote somewhere that we are all ordained to fellowship, which I take as humans and as artists, we're here to help one another. The problem that we all face is how much human energy is wasted on objectifying one another, and on the objectification of one another. I think we as artists are ordained to help one another in that it is our job to subjectify one another. Our task is the subjectification of one another, to look at to name ourselves as subjects, but also to do each other the honor and the respect of allowing everyone else to name themselves in their own experience. The theological tradition that's local to my particular culture and geography puts great emphasis on a concept that is usually referred to as I and thou, and it's a beautiful paradox. And since I practice art not only welcomes paradox, but it thrives on it. And it's the idea that we embody ourselves, we embody our I, our in selves, are realized to the extent that we are solicitous and respectful of other people's humanity. So you become yourself to the extent that you subordinate yourself to other people's humanity. Thank you. So that, going back to this idea of imaginative truth, so in art, my days are spent listening to characters. That habituates me to, as a person, spending my time listening to other people, other human souls. I think this also, in my experience, emphasizes the importance of being a teacher as well as an artist. I consider it as important as creating my own art. I consider that it's my job to help other people in their own process of creating their own art, of helping them with that fragmentary, halting, incomplete, improvised, fragile effort to construct, to name, to maintain, more importantly, to preserve their own vision of the world and of themselves, whatever the idiom, whatever the medium. I think the reason why that's so important too is because as the sacred texts with which I am familiar, and I'm sure the wisdom literature with which I am not, constantly reminds us that there's nothing easier in the world for a human being to do than to confirm his or her own humanity at the expense of somebody else's. And I think art is an effort that stands in direct contradiction to that force against us that would objectify us. There's so many powers in the world that take away people's rights to name themselves, to name their own experience, to find their own language or means for doing so. And so it is our job to preserve in that space and that time with strength and fellowship, that cooperation required for these fragile, improvised creations, which, if realized, become the strong, undeniable, irreducible, lasting works of art that we most hope for them. I think this also means that art, in addition to requiring imaginative truth and cooperation, requires that we give one another sanctuary. Sanctuary like this third Islamabad Literary Festival, at which we have all spent the past 3 days encouraging, debating, challenging, delighting, exasperating, inspiring one another in good faith. Also in sanctuaries like T24. In an awful, tragic coincidence, I arrived here to celebrate literature with you on the night of Sabine Mahmoud's passing. I feel like from hearing about her project of Peace Niche and her idea of that being intellectual poverty alleviation, she was dedicated to providing exactly the kind of sanctuary and exactly the kind of fellowship that I have in mind. I've only come to know about Sabine in the past 3 days, and only at second hand, but from the outpouring of love and of grief and of loyalty and of resolve to continue her projects, I have the acute and painful sense of having lost a friend I never had a chance to meet. When I heard of this trip, I immediately began to imagine the world I would find, apropos. On the long plane ride here, I imagined what I would find. My imaginings were, of course, in black and white, of course fragmentary, of course improvisational. In principle, I knew that I would have the great fortune of listening and watching what have until now largely been confined to the black and white pages of the New York Times. Watching all of that resolve into the full color of your art and your sciences and your history and your literature, and into the shared humanity that as artists I think we all seek. The actuality of this experience I'm most happily and most deeply moved to report has exceeded my imagination to such an extent that I simply could never have imagined it. So the keynote I would finally like to strike as your guest is simply gratitude. Gratitude in the sense of being thankful for having been allowed to be a part of this profound weekend with all of you in a manner and to a degree which I can never repay. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Paul Harding, for sharing such captivating thoughts with us. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to call our team of volunteers to the stage who has been working diligently throughout the session. Please put your hands together for them. Thank you all. Thank you all. इधर से आओ.
आगे आ जाओ कुछ Stay नीचे और
Thank you very much for your great contribution. We all appreciate it. नहीं वो कैरी नहीं कर रहा मैंने मना क्या करी वो नहीं करवाना टाइम नहीं है उनको बता दीजिए The celebration begins. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to thank our honorable guests for joining us today and adding such great fervor to our closing ceremony. Thank you so much.
announce Ramji.
Amina, Ramji ka karna hai?
Ramji se
Okay, ji. And now, I would like to invite Framji Manwala to read out a resolution which he has drafted as an act of tribute to Sabine Mahmood.
I actually didn't draft this. Chandana Minhas drafted it. She sent it to me. I just fixed the grammar and and cleaned it up a little. She did it very quickly. She's back in Karachi. So it's a very quick resolution, and we would like all delegates, all attendees, who are willing to sign on to it, if you so desire. With the murder of Sabine Mahmood on 24th April 2015, Pakistan has lost another irreplaceable citizen. In the few days since her death, Ms. Mahmood has been described as a human rights activist, a women's rights activist, an NGO woman, and even a foreign agent. The truth is significantly simpler. Ms. Mahmood was a fine human being who wanted to make the world better. In this, she was like others across the country, channeling the spirit of a kinder, gentler, more progressive time, a time when people were able to see each other as more than just victims and aggressors, selves and others. She co-founded Peace Niche and T2F as a way to provide her fellow citizens with the support we need to think, discuss, and argue about the lives we live and the challenges we face, and as a place where we could present our work and thinking in whatever form it took. She embraced what she called intellectual poverty alleviation and built an institution that showcased the work of both established and emerging artists, musicians, writers and performers, activists and academics, public intellectuals, and independent politicians. Her commitment to freedom of thought and freedom of expression was amply evident in the range of opinions aired by people who presented and attended sessions at T2F. Her profoundly principled opposition to the policies of the state, its many agencies, and those individuals who want to silence us as abruptly and cruelly as they silenced her, was clearly evident in the phenomenal range of issues discussed and debated. Religious fundamentalisms, the rights of minorities, the blasphemy law, the plight of the Hazaras, the missing persons of Balochistan, the role and responsibilities of the media, to name a few. With this statement, we declare that we will not be silent, and we are not afraid. We affirm our firm belief in the idea that the freedom of expression is a fundamental right. Any attack on this, whether by violent means or the gentler murder by legislation, is an attack on us all and will be resisted. We say that we recognize the divisions among and within us and plan to work to bridge these. Class and linguistic apartheid in our society must end. In order to speak with each other fully and honestly, we must learn how to speak each other's languages. We might not agree, and that is all right. Through disagreement, we build consensus. But we must agree that it is all right to disagree. And we impress on our fellow citizens and ourselves that there are choices available to us, choices besides exit or exile. A door is indeed closing on us, but we reaffirm our commitment to pushing it back open. We will not allow it to slam shut and so trap us in darkness. With this statement, we affirm that human beings have the fundamental right to tell their own stories and to define their own lives. It matters not whether they hail from Fatah or KPK or Sindh or Balochistan or the Punjab or Azad Kashmir. And they have the right to tell these stories in the languages they choose, whether Pashto or Seraiki or Sindhi or Punjabi or Balochi or Hindko or Kutchi or Gujarati, and yes, even Urdu and English. With this statement, we affirm that we hold no subject unapproachable, no topic taboo. And through this, we say that all discourse, social, political, artistic, must be de-weaponized. We celebrate the depth and nuance of language, whether it be the language of words, of movement, of image, of sound, or even of numbers. This is what Sabine Mahmood stood for. This is what the Islamabad Literature Festival stands for. This is what we all stand for, together with the fallen and the living. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Framji Manwala, for sharing such heart-touching thoughts with us. Ladies and gentlemen, I would again like to thank our respected guests for being here with us and sharing such profound thoughts during the closing ceremony. Thank you very much. Respected guests, now we present extremely captivating Sufi music So prepare yourselves to get transported to another world by this wondrous music by Rafi Peer. The Rafi Peer Theatre Workshop is a unique cultural organization whose work in the performing and visual arts as well as international cross-cultural events spans over 3 decades. Our first performer this evening is Akhtar Chanal Zehri, who is the most recognized Balochi Barawi singer in Pakistan today. He has a great stage presence that makes him an instant hit with audience all over the world. He dances while he sings, and it is a treat to see him whirl and move singing the romances of character living in the craggy soil of the province of Balochistan. I would like to invite Akhtar Chanal Zehri for the performance now. हाँ जी, अब इसके बाद